Hello, family, friends, and YouTube. I'm back again. Oops. He just came in. Jimmy! Jimmy! Hello, Jimmy. Thank you. What am I saying? Trying to find my road, and it's darker than usual. It's still burning up. I think it's this road, but I'm not for sure. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me. I'm trying to find a road. I'm trying to get home. hello, everyone. Hello. I just passed it. That's the road. We're passing it, and there's a car behind me, so I have to turn around now. We're gonna see a big chicken. I'm gonna pull into the big chicken area. Going across the land past this river. Missed the big chicken. Let's see. Okay, let me stop for a second since I pulled over to see who's all in chat to say hello and who stopped by. My name is Davon. Hello, Davon. Where am I at? I am in Texas. I will be safe, Jimmy. Hi, Work and Travel TV. Nice to see you. And I have Run, Jack of all trades, joining me again. Hi. Looks kind of scary. Where are you? It's a test. It's a test.
For me, even if you see my like for me, even if you see my face, they assume that like they're gonna assume whatever. Well, why don't you? Someone told me that you know what someone told me. Here's what's funny. You know what someone told me? They said that means you're probably the one doing it because they were like, but yeah, they were somebody I met in person. I said, and I just laughed and I said that's the funniest thing to me too. I said, oh, that's exactly how someone who wants to perpetuate something because they're hoping to get something react. Like I'm just saying, like that's what I realized. It's like human nature is kind of crazy, smooth stuff. But I don't know. I'm random. I just said that randomly. But I was like, yeah, I thought about something that someone said to me one time because they didn't like something how I acted, and then it was cool. It was cool, but it was like, oh, You really think that? And then I said, oh, you're like this. Whatever. Okay, whatever. Certain people, most people I met are really cool. Everybody I met is cool.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. Let me see what it says. You're in Texas. I'm
It's
out
all
of Texas, but I moved. Okay.
right. I just came back. Jimmy, I just came back like out of nowhere. I just popped up out of nowhere.
Telling you, you can just join anytime. You just got to send me an email with your email address. And yeah. So this is
I don't
one
trust
of my
none.
favorite roads to drive down. It's right beside like a creek, a river, and they got good stuff over here. But way home, way to work. Maybe I'll take y'all on a work morning so you can see the sun rising with this road. I
What
love
do
this
you?
road.
I have a question. I have a question for anybody in the chat right now. What do you think about this? You too, Tish. What do you think?
What?
What do you think if someone was like, "Oh, I can, if that person, then we can get this happen." Like, but they're going on another thing because they think they're gonna get a couple of dollars for it. What if somebody said to you, if you do that, you get a couple of dollars for it? What would you do? If and it wasn't a couple of dollars, it was a lot. What would you do? Like, would you be like, okay, like, no, your spirit. Like, what would you say? Would you say okay, or you'd be like, no?
I would be
Or
like,
you'd be
no,
like,
I'm not gonna. First of all, I'm a person who doesn't go against the morals, and I'm a very
yep,
loving and caring person, and I do believe that whatever you put bad out there, especially if it's towards me,
many,
me, Tisha,
yep,
it's
yep.
going to come back to you 100-fold because I
Of
stand
course.
on God. And so if there's anybody out there
Thank
trying to be nefarious to me or to hurt me,
you.
it's going to come back to them, like no matter what, or my
I need to
family.
hear it.
And it's going to
I
be
need
a
to hear
wrath
it.
upon them. And that I'm not worried about
What would you
because
say?
God sees
What would you say?
all. And what's done in dark will be shown in the
Always
light,
brought
no
to the
matter
light.
what.
Yes, exactly. So what if some like this is what I
My answer
experienced.
would be no. I
Yeah.
don't go against anybody, and
Dang.
nobody can twist my mind enough to be twisted towards somebody else on this world. There's already enough of that deviance around. So that's just
Yes, it
where I
is.
stand. And a lot of people may not like that, but that's where I stand. You're not going to get me to do something against someone else badly and for bad intentions to make you feel better.
Yes, thank. And there's a lot of that I've seen go around.
But
And then
I'm also not a very materialistic person. Like,
me either.
I've had my dreams, I've had my
I
wants, I've
like
had my
that.
needs. I'm not materialistic. I don't look at somebody for their value of what they have. I look at their spirit. I look at their heart. I look at their intentions. I look at how they interact with other people and especially how
Yep.
they interact with me. Can I trust
Yeah.
them? There's a lot of different things there that goes on.
That's
So
what I'm.
for me, no.
That's what I was explaining earlier today. I was like explaining sort of kind of like in a way, like because I know there's people who are under having a lot of things like that, like what I've experienced, and then in my case, I'm just somehow, and then I kind of was like, and I'm like, this shouldn't have went like that, and then I couldn't do anything in a certain situations, and I was like, well, this is kind of messed up, and I was like, oh, I see what's going on, and then certain things went on that were really crazy, and I was literally, I hate to say it, but I don't like hating to say it. It's the truth. I was like, oh, I have to pray about this because this is weird, and then it was just one of those things. It's just like, oh yeah, this is like, and then someone else was like, yeah, this is gonna happen, and I'm like, I don't think so. I said, I think it's there's gonna be a protection put, and then that's what it is. And like, I was like, because that was all perpetuated by this, and then it was meant to be this way, and that's what's gonna happen. And some are gonna be like, oh, and then they're gonna be like, that's messed up. But then, oh, wait a minute, and then they're gonna, but that's, like in the dark, in the light, it's kind of like, oh, well, there was a light there, but nobody was listening to that light. I tried to be that person. I was that person kind of in a way. I was like, hey, and then, but I was realized I was being put in those situations, and I was like, oh, this isn't like doing something. Like I was like, this is just outside of my control. But I realized there was I had to really like I had to be like very much like a I had to really analyze those things like what was happening. Like I was like, oh, and still try, and then even then I was being put subjected to a lot of things. So, it just was like it was just a crazy thing. Some people were like, you can't talk about those things. I'm like, hey, the truth is, some people need to hear that because that's the truth of them. It's the truth of the other. So and some aren't like that, and some are. So that's the truth. In that way, like, and then it kind of helps because I helped some others because they were like, oh man, they're like what? And I'm like, then like, wait a minute, and then they're like, wait a minute, and I'm like, yeah. And I didn't want, but I didn't like. I helped them and took them out of harm's way without getting them in harm. And then there was other situations where I couldn't do anything. I was like, I can't do anything because then I got put in harm, and then there was stuff that went on. So I was like, oh, this is crazy. And then I realized there was someone who didn't like me a certain way, and then I did. But I was like, I don't. I've only seen this individual like this time, and I seen this other person, and I said, I don't know why they're acting like this. I was like, this is something strange going on here. But overall, I mean, I can't do nothing other than be like, well, that's. And I just go about my life, and there's a lot of. And I know there's a lot of other people that don't like it, this happening either. Go about my life, and then hope and pray, the good book and everything. And then even though I like to listen to my rap, I like music too. And but I spent like a long time. I told it a hermit hood. I went to hermit hood for a little bit. Like people were like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I don't want to deal with anything," because people were just being weird.
I just try to keep myself out of those things. That's why I think
Yep.
it's me doing this and knowing who like really are like good people in the community. I'm not saying that
I
there's
met
good and
I
bad
met
in every community, and I hear about
I
it.
met
Like
people who were the roughest people on the block, and they were like, they knew what to say to me. Like I met people like that too, and they knew what to say to me, and they're like, I don't want. They're like, I don't like this, man. They're like, I don't like something happening to you like that. Like there's something. They're like, there's something going weird, and they're like, just be cool. Like try to like, and they're like, I don't know. And one person was like, I don't even know what to tell you. Like you need to. And I was like you just need to do this song. Like give me the. Like you just need to. And I was like, thanks, I guess. But they're like, nah, I don't. But they're like, I don't like seeing you. They didn't like seeing my pain I was going through in those times because they could see like my kind of frustration. They're like, oh, there's some stuff going on, something weird going on. But that's life. Like, it's part of life, but it's not. Sometimes it doesn't need to be there. I found tadpoles though.
you found tadpoles.
Yeah, I found tadpoles. That kind of like made me like happy today because I found tadpoles. I was like, there's tadpoles. I was like, why is there tadpoles in here? I was like, I couldn't believe I found them. And that was what was funny about it. I was like, did somebody put these here? I was like, what they gonna turn into? I was like, I don't even know. I was like, looking at them.
You know
I
what
don't want
I
to put them in my.
noticed? Your screen is frozen. Oh wait, move your foot. Oh, there you go. Yeah, you were just standing in one place. Your foot wasn't moving. I'm like, your
See,
screen's frozen.
it's like the Matrix was frozen right here.
This is pretty
Like,
cool
nah.
feature. I love this little hollow, but it has like all of these trees. It was flooded back up in here not too long ago. Like you couldn't even take this road for a while because it's all
Texas
flooded
is a
out.
different sort of place. You guys have them dang caterpillars. That's the one that got me. The caterpillars.
The caterpillars?
Yeah, you guys have those dang like they're like a they look like they're like a I don't know what they're a type of woolly caterpillar. They look like they have a hair on them. They don't even look like they're anything, and those things are
Oh, the
poisonous.
fuzzy ones,
Yeah,
the really scary ones. I forget what they're called.
they're like kind of a gray, like a light colored gray brownish thing. Yeah, oh gosh, they look like
Yeah,
hair, like their hairs on them. Yeah,
yeah,
those.
they like brownish reddish hair at times.
Yeah, and there was one, and it was like in the parking lot thing, and I was like going, and and the guy said, "Go ahead and touch it," and I was like, "What is that?" And I was like, "It's a caterpillar or something," and then I was like, "I don't know," and I was like, "I don't think you should touch it because it was like, I was like, it's covered in those something, and I don't trust that. I ain't seen, and we have something like that here, but it's not like that." And I said, usually sometimes when they're like that, they're not soft. There's something about them you shouldn't be touching them. So I said, go touch it. Someone else touched it, and they're like, oh, and I was like, didn't they like snap? I said, yeah, it hurt you like that. And then they like go back and touch it, and I was like, I'm gonna go back, and I went back and I touched that thing. Oh man, I said, I wish I would never.
I used to
I
let
learned
them
that
crawl,
lesson.
like all
Yeah,
of the like caterpillars when I see them. I like to let them like crawl onto your
I learned the
hand.
lesson.
I don't know. I have a weird fixation with bugs. I like bugs.
I was like, don't. I was like, don't let it. I was
I
like, no.
used
I
to
said,
like
those are. Don't let those touch
play
you.
with
Those on the skin. Oh my god.
just crawling all the little legs and everything.
Yeah, yeah. I used to let them crawl on me too. Like we have a couple of types here, and then the one there I found out it's not supposed to be here. We had like the gypsy moth. We had that for a while, and there's still some around, but they're not as bad as they were. And then uh, yeah, and you just let them crawl on you, but they're like no, like they just tear up everything. And I was like oh, and then we have this other one that's kind of fuzzy, and they're soft, and they just kind of and they turn into like a moth. And there's a couple other ones. They have the cool colors on them. They're really cool looking. But that one, that's the one. I was like, no. I was like, I touched that thing. I said, oh no. That's like getting electric shock or something. Actually, that's like getting shocked by electricity. I was like, oh yeah. I was like, nah. And then like my hand was like that for like a long time. Like and I was upset, and I was like, and then the other person was like, "I told you," and they got it worse than me, and they're like, "Yeah, you see what I'm feeling like right now," and I was like, "Okay," and yeah,
Oh my
that was a fun
goodness.
thing in Texas that happened to me. I was in Texas when that happened, and I was at a rest stop, and I found the place in a rest stop. Oh gosh, where was that at? This one rest stop had a bunch of invasive species one time too. I found when I was young. And then yeah, it had invasive species there. And then I found it. But I didn't know they were invasive. I was like, those look like something that was like in it looked like something that was in like something that came from like the Amazons. Like it was like there was cockroaches there, but they were huge. Yeah,
Ew,
they were huge, and they had different kinds. And I was like,
like the tree
yeah,
cockroaches.
and I was like, what is that?
They're called like tree. And they
Yeah,
fly.
and they were
Those are the scariest.
yeah, and they're like harmless, but then like I was like, what is that? And I was like, it's huge. And there was like and I was like, this place is full of them. And I was freaking out. And I was like, why is there so many? And I just walked into like this, like, it was like a lit up area. So they were all in that area. And I was like, but why are there just like so many of these different types of cockroaches? There were different species in there. I was like, why are they here? And I was like, these are not supposed to be here. There's some reason why they're here. And they was like, and I was like, I went back to the car. I was like, there's all kind of like cockroaches. They're like, no, there's not. I'm like, there's all kind of. They told me to go by myself. They're like, go look, open there, go over there. And I was like, why is everybody sending me over here? And then they're like, I guess because they had already went there. And then I went to this machine, and there was all these roaches. I was like, oh, there's roaches there. I think they were expecting me to scream like and I just like stopped and I looked and I just looked down. And I saw all kind of crazy cockroaches, and I was like, oh, look how big that is, and it was huge. This is almost as big as my phone. This is a huge
You
thing.
know,
I was
I'm
like,
serious. Yeah, they are big. They are scary. They're
yeah.
freaky.
And they just
Were you
crawled
ever
around.
in Texas? Were you ever in Texas with the what is it? The beetle season, where all the beetles like surround everything, and the crickets surround every door. They all just come out, and it's just
I know
like
they have. You
gross.
guys have the. It's like an orange looking beetle. It's like orange and yellowish looking, and they look like the size of like a. They look like the size of a little bit bigger than an acorn, and it seemed like them things were everywhere. and they would be hitting the car and stuff. I remember that one time when I was doing a road trip, and I was like, "Damn, these things are everywhere!" Like, pop, 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 pop. I was like, "They're hitting the car," and there's this type of beetle, almost like a June bug, but it's not. It's something else, and they're a little smaller. Because we have June bugs here. Uh, I have a picture of one on one of my as a thumbnail. I have a picture of one that I found, and I find them sometimes when I go fishing. Sometimes in June and May, I find them when they're coming out of the ground and stuff. But like this thing is smaller than that, and I was like, "What is that?" And then somebody was telling me like they're like a June bug, but they come out near that time, and there's this type of beetle, and I think they have them in Texas, and on the way to Texas, they kind of have them. Like once you get out of a couple certain states, the states bordering it, they have them. As you get towards that state, they start having them, and then as you're going out, they still have them until you get into a couple other states. Then they're kind of when you go towards the states, they have these beetles, and they're just like those ones, man. They're just hitting them with the car. I was like, man, they're just like everywhere. I was like, these things are everywhere. And there's a type of grass, and then the locust like grasshopper type of thing. We went to an area we had that one time, long time. I was like, they're everywhere.
They
What
are.
are these things? They're
Or like
big.
if you're in South Texas, when the monarch butterflies start coming out, like in South Texas, and they'll start coming this way. They're coming up from Mexico, and the
Yeah, like I was
monarch,
like, oh,
like they're everywhere. And you come back from South Texas, and your car is just like the color of monarchs, which is sad because you hit so many of them. But I mean, it is it just seeing like
you feel bad.
how
You're
the
like, oh,
insects react to the
they're
seasons,
the pollinators. They're the
Yeah,
pollinators. So you're like, you feel kind of bad. Like, some
yeah.
butterfly hit one.
Well, I mean, you can't avoid hitting them when there's like
Yeah.
a lot of them
Oh
around,
yeah.
when they're just
Yeah.
all coming out at the same time.
Like we have lightning bugs here, but we don't have tons of them. We have lightning bugs here, but we don't have. There when you get to a certain area here, we have lightning bugs, and I was seeing them one time, and person I was with, I was showing them, and she was like, "Whatever." I said, we might see them when we go to this one area. I said, that's if we see any, it's gonna be in these areas. And then she was like, no, we're not. And I was like, she's like, we don't have those. And she was like, there is. And I'm like, yeah, I told you. I said, but we don't usually have them on the other side very often of the where I'm at, the area I'm at. We don't see them there. Once you cross that mountain, though, to get over to the other side of the state, then you start seeing them. And she didn't believe me, and I was like, no, 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 like it's a different species than you would the ones you get in the southern state, but they light up and everything. She was like, no, 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 and then I was like, look, look out there. We're driving down like road trip thing, like a day trip, like a 2 day trip, and I'm like, look. And she's like, yeah, that whole field is full of them. I was like, yeah, yeah, like they're just. I said they're sporadic, and I said it takes them a long time to get to the point where they fly, like that you can see them. And it's just, I didn't know that. I was like, yeah. I said we have a different species here. They're a little different than the ones like in the South and Illinois and different places. They're a little different species, but they're a type of lightning bug.
I never thought about. It had been a long time since I had thought about lightning bugs, and I saw like not this past summer in the evening. I think it was like late August. I know it was super hot. Saw like three of them, and that was like the first time in a really long time. I'm like, really, what happened to all of the lightning bugs? I was, started thinking about that because I remember when I was a child here in Texas. I remember just seeing like the backyard would be full of them. I couldn't wait until like
Yeah,
they would come
catch
out
them,
because I would try to chase them and catch them, and
catch them in the
it
jar.
was
Yeah.
crazy.
When I was
Yeah.
in Illinois, that's what we do. They like once we came, they were catching them in the jars and I was like, and I was like sitting in the thing. Like my grandma, she's passed away now. And I'm sitting there and like my sister was like, "Look what we," because they were older, so they were allowed to run around. And I was like, "Man, I'm not like a student." They're like, "Nah, there's animals, there's things. You're not from here. You don't know what's up." But I was the one who was a nature person or nature oriented a little bit actually. They just didn't know. And she came out here like, "Look at it," and they had like a jar and there all them things were lit up, and then they said, "Here," and they're like, "Take them with you." So I had this jar of lightning bugs. And then they're like, you can't take those back home because, and then I guess they realized like we don't know what kind of species, we don't know what kind of species. And that was back in the day when people didn't know about that stuff. It was good to me. They knew about it, but And there's a different. It's actually a different, totally different species of lightning bug, and they're like, yeah, you can. So basically, like when we hit a certain state, they're like, yeah, you can't. They were like, let some things go. I was like, what? We crossed like two states, and like, yeah, no. Like these are from this state, like these two states,
Dang,
like area.
dude.
You can't transport. Don't transport it further than that. It's natural for here. There's these couple states around it. And so I was like, think about it as a later when I got older. It's like, oh yeah, that's probably why their parents were like, let them go. We're stopping here. Let them go. Because I was like, oh, I got my lightning bug. I'm gonna show my friends these lightning bugs. And they're like, no, you're not. Like, we're stopping right here. You're letting them go. I was like, okay. I was like, man. I was like, man. Yeah. It was done like it's kind of like a done on purpose thing. They're like, yeah, we're gonna let them go when we get like right here because they're supposed to stay here. And I was like, oh man, because it was one of my little family members that like try to be nice, like cousin you hadn't seen in a long time. He's like, I brought you a present because I know you wanted to see them because I never got to see them. So it caught me. They went around and they caught like a jar of them, like 8 or 9 of them, and they put them in the jar. And they're like, there's your lightning bug. They're like,
That's
you got
cool.
nightlight. you know,
I
you got
remember doing
nightlight.
that in elementary school, putting them in the jars and poking the holes on
Yeah.
top and just having like my lightning bug. And then I woke up one morning and I had 3 were in there and the 3 were like dead. So I never did that again. Like if I wanted to have them in
Yeah.
my jar, I would always make
Mhm.
sure I would let them out before. But I had done that. I remember that. It's like
I,
weird stuff that you
I,
remember from your childhood, and
yeah.
I'm very I'm I'm just so happy my mom was a good mom. My mom was such a good mom, and I
I
loved
caught
her
some
so.
stuff.
I love her so much. Like,
I
I
caught
miss
some
her.
stuff and it got out too. I caught stuff and it
Huh?
got out too. I caught
Oh,
stuff and it
yours
got
got
out.
out?
Some stuff got out, like creatures that were like, I would study this. I would study the thing. It got out. And I was like, oh. And I was like, wake up in the morning, like, you forgot about it. So like, but it's alive. You're taking care of it, kind of. And then you're like, oh, wait a minute. There was 4 of them, and there's only 2.
Oh,
It's,
oh yeah. So they're
yeah.
gone.
You're like, wait a minute. Was the hole? Oh, you're like, oh, the hole was big enough. And you're like, oh.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, if
No,
mom
but
and dad
I don't
find
think
this,
my holes were big enough. I think I might have,
yeah,
like,
they're gonna
I
be
was
upset.
little and I was doing it on my own and it was my own
It
arts
got
and
out.
crafts. But yeah, I probably
It got
didn't
out.
poke the hole big enough or something for me to wake up and then them be dead the next day. That's
Well,
kind of sad.
I was a young person, so I was like, maybe it won't get out. It probably won't. People are like, no, it's fine. And then they're like, and then I'm like,
Being a
oh,
child.
they can, and I'm like, oh, they can actually like, they actually are kind of strong. They can push on that and get out. I didn't realize how strong some critters were. And I was like, even though they're small, I was like, oh, they're actually strong. And I realized like some things, I'm like, oh, they're actually strong. You just don't think they can get out. I was like, oh, it's in the house. I had a
Mm.
lizard get out before. I had a lizard at one point, and then I found him. He was on the curtains looking at me from the curtains.
How funny.
He's like up on the top of a green lizard looking down from the curtains, like, what's
He
up,
was
man?
just
He's
hanging
like,
out.
I was up here, and I was like, oh man, he got out. He's up on the thing. He's like, I'm like walking everywhere in the house. I'm like, oh, he's on the curtain. He's just hanging. It was just an old lizard, and he's just like up there. Like, he's like, I got out, man. I'm up here. And I had to like try to catch him. He was all fast and jumping around. And then something else I had one time at one point, and I had as a pet, and it got out. And I was like, oh. And I was like, hey man, I said, some of these things they tell you there's where these animals are supposed to be, and they should be telling you that's what they're supposed to be in. you know? And that was then. They didn't know, now you can go, now we got YouTube, you can kind of go in there, and people really are really into that. You can really learn more about it. But that was one of the animals I remember. I remember that green lizard like up in the thing, and I looked up, and I was like, I can't find it. And I looked up, and there he was up on the top of the curtain on the top, and he was looking down at me. And I said, I see you up there. And I had to like get a chair and like get up and try to get that lizard down. I remember that. Trying to catch it, and he was moving around.
I never had like
Fun.
reptiles or animals like that, and mostly like had a couple of dogs growing up. I've had cats. I have
Oh,
like allergies and stuff, and to where sometimes it'll get to me, but I would take like allergy medicine and stuff. It's just the dust and dander that I'm allergic to, but I
I
would
think
take
I
it.
am too. Actually, I think I am too because I had a cat for a long time, and I would sneeze all over, and they're like, someone was like, I think you're allergic to them, and I said, we've always had cats, and I just got used to it. My eyes would well up and everything, the hair would blow in my face, and I got used to it. So like and the people were like, you need to take Benadryl or something, and I'm like, I'm fine. Like I just got used to it because we always had those kind of running around, they were hunting mice and everything or whatever. So I was like, nah, I was used to it, and the cat would come up to me, and I even trained the cat to do certain things, and like it was nothing. It wasn't really weird to me, but people were like, you're allergic. Like they're like, you're sneezing like crazy, and they're like, they would take me somewhere, and they're like, how come you're not sneezing when this animal's around you? And I'm like, this is another cat. Like I said, well, there's a different type of cat species. There's a different cat breed. I said their fur is a little bit different than this one, and this one's a little different than that one. And so, and then this person keeps their house a certain way, or when the dander, and then the hair strip sometimes would make my eyes like well up, but I just got used to it. And I don't
Uh,
think I was really truly allergic. I think it's just like my reaction. I just would react to this like pollen. I react to pollen sometimes really bad,
mhm.
but I got used to being
It's
in
just
it.
the normal stuff here, but dust
Yeah,
and dander when it's really high in the air, I feel it like
yeah.
it just puffs out at you sometimes. So I get that, and I don't like
Yeah,
taking
me too.
medicines,
Me,
so
I know
I
it makes me groggy. It makes me groggy. I don't
handle
like
it as much as I can.
that. Makes me
Yeah,
groggy.
Benadryl definitely does. Makes me go
Yep.
straight to sleep.
Oh, yep.
I think that's
Don't
what
like
it's
it.
supposed to do. I don't know.
Yeah, so
But
I'm like that doesn't help. That only helps for
I
people who are it's really bad. But yeah,
but Ren, I appreciate you being on the live with me and testing this
yep.
out and making sure that I can do this properly while I have my lives for the next couple of weeks. Like I said, I'll
You
be
got it.
doing this. This will be the first week. I'm in the first week, so I probably need to do one more live stream. And well, I've done two already tonight, but um,
I'm gonna
I
try
do
to.
appreciate you, and I appreciate
Yeah, you just
like speaking with
you
you. Like
you've
it's been
learned to
good getting
know
to know
me some
you, and we'll
more.
have to speak more. Huh?
You've learned some things about me a little bit,
Oh
like
yes, and I
kind of
hope you
view
like
things.
learn some things about me, and you uh, kind of see how I kind of see life and people. I really try to look at everyone with open eyes and good intentions all the time. I always try to look at the best thing in the person and grow from there
Well,
because everybody has their flaws. Everyone, even I do. No one's
I mean,
perfect.
it's not even just
Um,
flaws. It's like
and so,
as you grow up, it's not even just the flaws. It's like as you grow up, you learn that some are more manipulative and they've already learned how to be manipulative. Some are not, and then you learn it as you get older,
but
and you
that's the
see it.
world, though. That's the
It
world, and
is
that's what
period. It
it's
is
becoming.
period.
It's
At
just, and
large,
and that's why,
yeah.
and because of that's out there, it's like you have to just like look at everyone with a discerning heart of like, and you see the reflection of their intentions to you. And if they don't have good intentions, it doesn't mean I don't want to be around them. And it just means that I pull myself away from that because I'm
That's what
not
I did.
going to be in any of that. I don't,
That's what it is. That's what I did. I
yeah.
was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna be over here. And I'm gonna tie this thing, and then they go, hey, and I'm like, that's not to say bad on that person because I know things. I've been around that. I met that person in other scenarios, and another person in other scenarios. They just didn't think I remembered, and then I was like, oh, I remember kind of, and I was like, and they're like, you're kind of like this, and I'm like, yeah, huh. Like you look at it as you get older, and they're like, huh. And then some of them have had their own follies and things, and you're just like, hey, like I can actually we can actually meld and make cool things, but I just have people want to like I'm doing it for myself. This is how I was taught, because I'm a guy, they're a guy, and then there's another news, and I'm like, well, that's kind of, and how you're raised, and different things, and you're like, huh, interesting. And then you're like, hey, I'm gonna speak to you like this and see how you react. And then sometimes they're like, I don't believe you because they've been also bamboozled, at times. So you're like, oh yeah, I get it. I'm chilling. You're like, oh, okay, now I really see. Okay, and you're like, all right, I'm fine. And then you're like, oh, I probably didn't deserve this or that, but okay, and that's it. Then you keep it, try to keep it going, keep it rolling, whatever you like to do and things you like to do, and hopefully, in some way, you hope there's like a little bit of understanding and understand how you as a person too.
I understand that.
That's about it. And sometimes you can't do anything. You can't. You're like, I can't. And it's not to speak down on that person or other, because there's others. There's always something more that you can't. Others can't. You know, see. And that's about it. They can't see that part. So, yep.
I just don't judge people off of based on other people's opinions. I judge people on
Yeah.
their how they interact with me and how they
Even,
respond with me.
I told
You
a
just
story.
can't.
I told a story, and it's not even a story. It's a truth. Like something really crazy, and I realized that person had like the sweetest soul, but what that person had done was really horrible. And I met someone like, and then they like explained it to me, and I was like, oh yeah, like you shouldn't have been in that. That should have never happened to you. And I was like, oh, I see how. And then I said, and then they're like, and then I met someone else like that. And they told me, they said, I want to find. They were so upset. They're like, I want to find that person so bad. And then I was like, you know what? I bet you it's this. And then they're like, what? And they were like, wait a minute. And then they realized like, oh, you have like an insight. And they're like, wait a minute. And not because it was interesting how they reacted. And they're like, wait a minute, wait. And then they thought it was me. And I was like, no, 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 no. I was like, I have an insight, so I understand. And I said, and I said, because something happened to me. And I said, I have insight. I have an insight that'll help you, so you can move forward. Because I say, right now we're sitting here talking to you, so you're fine. You're nothing bad's happening. But what happened hurt you. And it wasn't right. And then they took that and they ran, and then they did okay after that. And they're like, thank goodness you said that. I was like, nobody else said that. I was just like, I was going after him. I was like, yeah. I was like, yeah. I said it was just been a big old war you would have created. And then in my case, I was like, I'm trying to go away. And then it's like, oh, this is still a big old thing that was created. And I was like, oh, that's just whatever that person was like forever. So it's like, okay. But yeah, okay. They're human beings. They have a spirit. They have a things have happened to other people too, and in themselves, and you don't know why they're uh, at you like that or do that. But yeah, I'll let you go. I'll be up. It's Friday. I'll be up cooking
Well,
things.
not saying I'm not going to be up for a little bit longer, but I do want to like get out of my work clothes. I want to get in my
You
house.
got
I
to
want
think.
to get
You
the
have
stuff
to
out of my
do.
car. I have so
You
much
got to do
stuff to do
life.
in the morning. I have to be up early. No, and I'm getting with a friend that I haven't like we've been chatting. We've been chatting off and on for like 2 years. I've known her like for almost 25 years, and her life has been a little uh,
Roller
like she's been doing
coaster.
really busy, and I've been really busy, and
Roller
just all
coaster.
sorts of stuff. And so we made it a plan to get together tomorrow. So I'm really excited about that. There's no telling what's going to happen. And then we're also going to a festival next weekend, which is going to be really cool because it's Eeyore's birthday. I think you're the one who like got me on that one because you mentioned Eeyore with the donkeys or whatever, and I was
Yep.
like, Eeyore, I love Eeyore. I've always loved Eeyore, and then I didn't know that they had this festival for Eeyore and his birthday party. That's crazy, but
I
that's
told
next
someone.
weekend, and that's in
I told someone
Austin.
else the same thing. I told someone else the same thing because they was like, I was like, okay. I used to be Eeyore. And people were like, man, you always like. I was like, bah. Because stuff was happening all the time. I was like, man, some of these people were like bothering me purposely. And I was
I
like, and
like
then I
the
told
way
someone
he
else that,
talks.
and then they're like, Eeyore. And I was like, oh, well, he's being. I said, no, now he's. And I said, oh, now this person being Eeyore. And I was like, that's kind of someone I like talking to. Another guy, and I was like, hey, man, you cool. he's been through some things too, and I was like, you're like Eeyore too. I said I'm out of the Eeyore phase a little bit now, but I still sometimes go like. So I kind of when I saw how he was acting, I was like, you're in the Eeyore phase, and you're still in it, but he's still doing things and he's functioning. He makes his money, does stuff. It was just kind of funny. I was like, you're you're kind of like Eeyore too, and then it was just kind of funny. And then I was like, no man, you're good. Like I said, how's Eeyore too? I said, sometimes I can revert back to Eeyore for a day or two, and then I come back out of it.
It
This
was
is,
always Eeyore or Piglet for me. Like I always loved to
why
play
are you
that
doing
game
that?
of put the tail on
Why you
Eeyore's.
do that for?
I
Why you
just
doing that for? That's Piglet. Why are you doing that for, guy?
oh yeah.
Yes.
Why? It's always like curious,
Yeah,
it's like the Piglet was the cat. It was so curious about things.
hey,
And
check this out, like
Eeyore is
this
just
cool
like,
thing.
it's,
And then yeah, he's like, yeah, it's not gonna matter anyways.
mm,
Yeah, that's the word. It's not gonna matter anyway. So
hmm yeah,
well,
sure was. But I
I guess it
appreciate
worked out
you,
this time.
and I
Yeah,
will
yeah.
email you later.
Okay,
But
cool.
thank you. And I
Cool,
can't
it's
believe
fun.
it's still light out there. You do have some time. So what time is it
Yeah.
there? It's like what, 8?
Yeah, 8:06, 8:07, just down. All right,
Wow.
cool.
Thank you. All right.
Just
But
hanging
thank
out.
you, chat. And
Thank you, folks.
thank you,
Anybody
Jimmy.
watching,
You're still
hanging out.
in. Yeah. Just listening to us just chat. Get to know me. Much love to all of you. Thank you so much. And y'all have a good evening. All right. I'll see y'all next time.
I'll see
Bye.
you.
Happy
Good
Easter.
see. You
See
got it.
ya.
See ya.